Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Well, not happy in Buffalo because their team is really crap in the bed lately, Russ. I mean, the only team we could beat is the Jets.
Yeah, well, they handed – I was texting you. I'm like, they're handing the division to New England. But that's all I really want to talk about with that because I hate them both.
Yeah, hey, but you know what? If the Bills continue to play the way they're playing and the way New England has played the last 5 or 6 weeks, they deserve to win the division. So anyway, but start with the pre-show.
So let's talk about Suzuki, who is going to get his hosting fee today for Major League Baseball. There's an interesting thing going on with it. I don't even know how you pronounce his first name. It's Seiya. Is it Suzuki?
Yeah.
There's always a risk when you get the Japanese players. He had 26 homers there, which means in a small ballpark here, maybe he gets 20, maybe he gets 15. I don't know if he's getting 26 here. But I'm sure he's good at a lot of different things, like most of the Japanese players are. There have been some really great ones and some bad ones. But the interesting thing is normally after the posting fee, it takes 20 days, or they get 20 days to decide. And now he only has 10 days to decide, because in 10 days the CBA runs out. And if they haven't decided, meaning the team on the offer from whatever major, the team in Japan, for whatever team offers in Major League Baseball, then it gets held in perpetuity until after they have a CBA. So Kev, if he doesn't make a 10-day, if there isn't a 10-day decision by the club, like there's not a posting fee that they accept, it's probably going to be 10 days after the CBA gets signed.
Yeah, and that could be a while.
That could be a while.
Yeah. Well, those kind of things happen when you have CBA negotiations looming. Everybody tries to get their T's crossed and their I's dotted before then, because they know, we've seen historically players lose out because of what was going on with the CBA.
And some money's being spent, Mike. Not a ton, but some.
Well, I mean, just about the Japanese players that come over. I mean, I think there are teams that are more than willing to take these chances. I mean, I think, but it's not a guarantee. I mean, Hideki Matsui was really good for a number of years. Ichiro is a Hall of Famer.
He was one of the best. Ichiro was the best. Matsui was one of the best.
Hideo Nomo was good for a number of years, but then
like 6 years, yeah.
But then, Kev, we had the Kayagawas and the Hideki Arabus,
Hideki Matsui.
It's always a risk. No matter what you do in sports, there's risk involved, and I think they think with Japanese players, the league over there has been there a long time. It's a strong league, and so you just calculate your risk based on how the player is performing. But and the draft, like you never know quite what you're getting with in the major league draft. So why should
even the ball's different? Like what you're saying is true, Kev, but like the stadium's fine. You could calculate the stadium size, what the guys throw, how fast, and all that. You can calculate all that, but even the ball is different. So you don't even know what the difference is because I got a ball from the Olympics, and it's completely different from what Major League Baseball uses. And it's kind of interesting that way.
Yeah, but it's just a risk, so you have to kind of calculate it. But I think it's the Major League Baseball is appreciative of this opportunity to get players, and you just got to decide what risk you're willing to take and how much money you're willing to risk on that signing, and then go with it. But I think for the most part they don't view it as in terms of the risk. They just see it as an opportunity, and sometimes they work out as you just stated, sometimes they don't.
Well,
there's been some good ones, that's for sure.
Well, I know it's on a case-by-case basis, but I wonder what is the bigger risk, and they're different sports, but is it a bigger risk with Japanese players coming over to play Major League Baseball as opposed to KHL players coming over to play in the National Hockey League? I mean, we've seen Panarin, who's a star, but I can count on two hands the number of KHLers that the Leafs have signed or other teams have signed that have been complete and utter busts. So,
yeah, but I think the greater risk is in baseball because of the amount of money. You know, there's no KHL players getting that kind of money.
No.
Yeah, I think everybody would be lining up if they could sign Suzuki for $925,000 on an entry level deal.
Yeah. Kaprizov is the odd one, and he was drafted. But yeah, as far as just a free agent shaking loose, making this kind of money, no, it really only happens in baseball, honestly.
Yeah. All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, November 22nd, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and have you defrosted your turkey yet? Start thinking about it.
I'm Kevin Allen from Hockey Buzz, and I've eaten my turkey. We had Thanksgiving on Saturday. Turkey, the whole bit.
Nice.
And I'm Michael Agello, and the turkey is in the bathtub as we speak. And this is HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. There's a whole story, but you're going to have to wait until tomorrow for me to explain what Rush just referenced. All right, let's talk about some of the games from last night and some of the news and notes that occurred over the weekend. Starting with the we may as well start at the UBS Arena. Why don't we, Russ?
Or the USB Arena. It depends who's announcing.
Yes, the home of the $25 Slurpee, and
that's got to be alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
It was, and the orange and blue colored bagel that they were selling. It was some sort of sandwich with a multicolored bagel that I think that it had enough carcinogens and food color that you'd probably.
Listen, if it's made from Bagel Boss, it's the real deal. I'd eat it.
Blue and orange.
What do I care? It's food coloring.
Okay.
It's the quality of the bagel, Michael. It's not the color.
So Kev, the Islanders opened their new building. Apparently, very impressive looking. I'd like to see it someday. With 2 losses, one to the Calgary Flames and the other to the Maple Leafs last night, 3-0 shutout with rookie Joseph Wall stopping 20 shots. I have to make excuses here for the Islanders as much as I'm loath to do so, but they're more the Bridgeport Islanders right now than the New York Islanders because they have 6 guys out with COVID. Pulak is out for 6 weeks, and now last night they lost Brock Nelson to a lower body injury, and now Noah Dobson. I haven't heard any update, but Noah Dobson got his leg folded out underneath him last night. So this team, we thought they would bounce back with all the home games. They're in trouble.
Yeah, they really are. And the roster, coming into the season looked like they were going to, and then based on the history of the last 2 postseasons, you felt like they were going to make a serious run for the Cup. And now you're wondering, can they even make the playoffs? And it's starting to look doubtful, and COVID's been in the middle of it as well. And I've had one reader send me a email, asking about, well, why isn't the Islanders game canceled because they have 6 players? And I don't have an answer for that, but the league's in a bad spot on that. Like, you can't really set up like, okay, once you reach this many players, then you cancel the games because it's all different. The protocol's different. It's all
different. I mean,
some people are on for contact. Some have tested positive. Some have no symptoms. Some have, mild symptoms. Some have moderate symptoms. So it doesn't really work like that. And it's a difficult task to decide, when to cancel or not. I liked the fact that the league had been consistently willing to sort of let them play, which I thought was the right thing to do until they reached a certain point. And, I couldn't have articulated what that point was, but I thought they reached that when Ottawa had 8 or 9 guys down with on the COVID protocol list. So, the Islanders are a mess. And I'm starting to believe that it isn't the bad road trip they had. It isn't the COVID, but maybe they're just not the team that we thought they were. That, taking out Nick Leddy, that maybe they needed him a little more than they thought. Maybe they didn't, like last season was, maybe they were a momentum team. Maybe they were not as good as we thought they were.
And 2 long runs in the playoffs. I mean, the beating that you take after having 2 long runs in consecutive playoffs in odd situations with the pandemic. But Russ, we looked at them bringing in Zach Parise and Zdeno Chara as sort of like supplemental pieces, or Chara right now with all the injuries on defense is playing over 23, 24 minutes. So that was
can't do that all year.
Yeah, that was not the intention. But I mean, really, they're not scoring the way we thought they'd score. We thought they'd be solid defensively. They're not as solid as they were. So yeah, I think there's a reason for concern right now, especially with the way the Metro is going.
A few things. So first thing is I felt really good for Islander fans that they got their building, right? And I said on another show, I was around as a kid, 9 years old, when Nassau Coliseum first came into existence. I remembered how exciting it was to have a new building on the island. You didn't have to always go to MSG anymore. It was a big deal. And I felt like this was just as big a deal, maybe bigger, because of the sojourn after that. This was a new franchise back when I was a kid. Now it's been around a long time, but it's been a long time since they had this kind of place. So I felt good about that. But I thought the first weird thing, Kev, I talked about it yesterday and before that, when Varlamov didn't go down for any kind of conditioning assignment and just joined the team, and he hadn't played at all in preseason, and all of a sudden he was just going to be up to speed, and that was a prayer. And that hasn't worked out. His save percentage is under 900. So that's bad because, again, they need stellar goaltending right now, and Sorokin's giving them all they can. The other thing is, and watching part of that Leaf game, Mike, they did put on pressure at one point in the game, at least, when they kept the Leafs on for a long change, but they still couldn't put the puck in the net. Wall was playing good, but like you said, you felt like they probably should have scored there because the Leafs were dead tired and couldn't get the puck out of the zone, and it was a full 2 minutes. It was almost like having a power play, and they just couldn't do it. They're completely anemic. So when you look at the guys, you say, okay, Zach Parise has not worked out so far. Kyle Palmieri has 1 goal, 6 assists. Wallstrom's worked out actually very well, and that's good. But some of the guys they brought in haven't worked out. And again, I think that's a part of it too, is because like Kevin said, it looked good on paper, but maybe it's not as good in real life.
And switching to the Leafs for a second, they've won now 11 of their last 13, which is based on the fact that they lost 4 in a row last month, and everybody was questioning, what was going on. It's miraculous. Campbell has been, playing regularly, although Wall played yesterday, but it's been mostly games at home at Scotiabank Arena. Now their schedule, they play 11 or now 10 of the next 15 games on the road. They go to California, which won't be the easiest of tests, or won't be like the cakewalk that it was the last couple of years, because all 3 of those teams are playing better. And then they go on another road trip through Western Canada later next month. So this is going to be challenging for the Leafs. And the indicator last night, Russ, they walked into a building that, all the pressure was on the Islanders, but that, they normally do not play well against the Islanders when they're at home. And last night, maybe it was the pressure of the situation, maybe it was the injuries, but the Leafs played what I thought was a near perfect road game.
Yeah, and Marner had the shorthanded goal, and
then an insurance goal later on.
Yeah, but that always sparks a team, and I just felt like they were getting the puck out with almost great ease. Like their defense was playing really well. Nobody ever wants to give the Leafs credit for how much better their defense is now than like 2 years ago, but it is. Fact is, it really is. And again, for people in the chat room, I'm not saying it's impossible for the Islanders to get back in it, but what I am saying is last week, as an example, in the Metro, to show what a buzzsaw it is, the Flyers had a chance of a possible 6 points. They only picked up 3. They lost 6 points in the standings. So, the Islanders, what they have going for them are games in hand. But the fact is, right now, and it could change, but right now 5 teams from the Metro are going to be in the playoffs if it started today. It's hard. The Metro is winning a lot of games, and those games, and Kev, I don't know what you think about this, but in a normal year, conference games are important, and of course division games are important. But if you have a division like the Metro this year, I kind of think every one of those games should, in theory, counts at like 1.5 times what it did a year before because of the tightness of this division.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And, when like Seattle beat Washington, did they not?
Yes.
Well, when those kind of things happen, you're going like, wow, like that's big in that division because that, you pretty much counted that as a win for the Capitals. So, I agree with you. And I think the games that are out of the division are even more important than they usually are because, you are sort of beating yourself up. Each team, it's probably like no one's going to run away by beating one team, 6 times or 5 times. So, you got to win those games that are not in your division to make hay.
Yeah, and right now, I know that Russ is pointing out and has been consistent in pointing out that he thinks that 5 are coming out of the Metro. Boston has been relatively hot recently. They were 4 in a row until they lost to Calgary. They've only played 15 games. Whereas most of the other teams have played, I'd say 17, 18, 19 games. They've only played 15, and they're only a point or two out of that second wild card. So they have some catching up to do. And really, the thing that's interesting about the Atlantic is already, we're a month and a week into the regular season. There's a sizable gap between sort of the haves and the have-nots. The only team that people would have categorized as the have-not is Detroit, and they're in the middle of things. But Buffalo is falling behind. Montreal is way back. Ottawa is struggling. So those teams are going to have the benefit of the sizable gap.
Yeah, and I can say that the Red Wings success, if we can call it, is a bit of a mirage. They haven't played well defensively, and you really over the course of the season can't play as poorly as they have defensively, and expect to be in the playoff race. And Boston's still a really good team. Like the 4 teams in the Atlantic Division that we thought were going to make the playoffs are going to make the playoffs. They're good teams. Unless something catastrophic happens, but. Boston's going to end up with a very good record. Toronto's going to end up with a very good record. Tampa Bay's going to end up with a very good record. And, Florida's going to. So, I don't see any of those teams falling by the wayside.
Now, the interesting thing is, Kev, Daniel Vladar got a shutout against his old team. He's had a hell of a year. Like we were talking about how good the Calgary goaltenders are, but Vladar may be the best backup in the league.
Well, yeah, and that Calgary, we've had a lot of surprises this year when you look around the league. Troy Terry, we've had the Anaheim Ducks go from the worst scoring team in the league to 8th going on. But I think Calgary is the biggest surprise. Teams do go from being non-factors to factors. It just happens. It's a lot of reasons for it. But this has been even more significant because of how they're doing it. Like they have been dominant, defensively. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch them. I think there's a tendency not to watch Daryl Sutter's teams because you think they're going to be kind of boring and play defensive hockey. But it's pretty darn impressive the way they play. And I've been the big story in Detroit is their poor defensive play, and it starts in the neutral zone. It's pretty easy to go from your own zone to the Red Wings zone because they just sort of give you a free pass in the neutral zone. Well, contrast that to when you watch Calgary play where, it's like slogging through the Amazon. You feel like you need machetes.
No, I equated it to going through no man's land on the Western Front. Kev. It was.
Well, I don't know if I would say that just because of the carnage involved in that, but it's tough. It's tough to get through there, and they're very, very effective at playing that style. And somebody wrote a column. I don't even remember who did, but it was a good column about too. And I think it's fascinating. A lot of the guys that they could lose or they might trade and everything are heavily responsible for their success. So
yeah, Goudreau's having a great year.
Yeah, no, so it'll be
Goudreau's having a good year. Kachuk is having a pretty good year. Now Monahan was on the fourth line until recently. He's been elevated. And an ex-favorite, his illegitimate son from a different name, Mangiapane. I had to point out to him, he's got 15 goals. He's second in the NHL, tied with Ovechkin, but he's only got 2 assists, so he's 25th in scoring.
I could care less. I have him on my fantasy. He could get 0 assists for all I care. But he is a feisty little scorer.
He is feisty.
Oh yeah,
he gets the job done. He's very impressive. I liked him last season, and I made it my goal to get him for my fantasy team.
That was a good move. I went in my fantasy. I went out and made sure I traded for Kreider because I just felt like people were down on him, and of course he's having a good year. We'll talk about the Rangers in a minute, but the thing about the Flames is, Kev, this style of play hasn't really been used since the league has been sped up and it wasn't as big and grinding as it was back in Sutter's day. I don't know if a team could keep this up all year.
Right.
Oh, yeah. See, but the thing about it is usually what we say about these systems, when they start to have success with it, well, just wait to get to the playoffs. Well, this will be great.
No, this is a playoff system. He's got to get through the regular season with it.
Yeah, it's not like they're beating people up. They're just playing hard. But I know
the amount of effort. It's the amount of effort on every shift.
But they are wearing teams down. That's part of this. I mean, they played the Leafs a couple weeks ago. The Leafs won 2-1 in overtime. I think that was the only. They've had one regulation loss and two overtime losses against the East. They played mostly the East. And they're 9-2-2 on the road. But really, they have the big guys like Zadorov and Goodbranson and Lucic up front, Trevor Lewis, and they're physical and they try to wear teams down. Now, whether those guys can do that for 82 games, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair because it's the mental strain of playing like that too. Because you got to think about it. You know what I mean? Like you can't, you have to go and say, look, I got to get on this guy.
Yeah.
So I can see that, but going back to the point I started to make, and then I went off on a tangent, is the Calgary Flames defensive style is strangely entertaining to me. Like I don't, but I've been fascinated by it. Like I watch this game, and every time they get in the neutral zone, I start to concentrate. And as I'm trying to count the number of guys, they got 5 guys in there. Like it is really impressive.
I think if you watched it every night, you'd eventually get bored.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying. I'm just saying it's been strangely entertaining to me, and I say this. I've said this so many times during my career, where I never give Daryl Sutter enough credit.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the media, he's too grumpy. He doesn't say much in the post game press conferences. He seems to favor Canadian writers. There's a lot of reasons, not to like him. But when you talk to players who play for him, they like him.
Right.
They find him honest. They find him real. They're entertained by his press conferences. They sit in the dressing room and watch him and laugh to themselves as he, plays off whatever reporters ask him. They like the fact that he reads, farm machinery magazines on the team bus. And the farm references that he makes. So it's not hard to understand why they sort of buy in, just because he's a pretty respected guy. And the Sutter family, they're real caring people. Even though they come across as really gruff, there are lots of stories out there about what the Sutters have done for people when they've been in need. So there's a lot of goodness that's been spread by the Sutter family through the years.
Well, I still think, though, and obviously he's in Calgary now, but I still think the funniest thing is thinking about Daryl Sutter in Southern California. And how the farmer from Viking, Alberta, and in SoCal with with the Lakers and the Dodgers and the pretty
Hockey's hockey, Mike. They play.
I know. But just one thing. So Flames have 11 victories, 7 of them shutouts. Markstrom has 6. I think that the competition for whoever is going to start in the Olympics for Team Sweden is over.
No, they had more than 7. I think Vladar's got 2 shutouts.
No, it's 7. I just checked. Vladar's got, well, it may have been 7 going into last night.
Yeah, I think it was going into last night.
Yeah, okay, so 8. Then it's 8. But
it's 8.
Yeah, a Flamester in the chat will probably have us. Have it corrected for us. Okay, let's talk about the Rangers, Russ. I checked in off and on that game against the Sabres because there were 4 goals scored in a minute and 22 seconds in the I think it was in the second period.
Right, so Flames said it's 7, but Vladar has 2, like I said.
Okay, Markstrom with 5. But my point is, Markstrom's a starting goalie for Sweden. It's not Leonard.
Oh yeah, it's not even a question.
So the Rangers and Sabres combined for 4 goals in a minute and 22 seconds, but the Rangers win the game 5-4 with less than a second left in regulation, Russ.
Yeah. Here's the oddity, and then I'll talk about some of the other parts of the game. So they get this great win with a second to go, and after they celebrate, Mika Zibanejad's getting chewed out by Gerard Gallant to the point where Sam Rosen goes, whoa, what's going on there? I don't even know. And then he just went back to talking about the game-winning goal. And what it turned out to be was Zibanejad had gotten tripped, and he was complaining to the ref, and Gallant was yelling at him like it's not the time to do that. But he was yelling at him to the point where it's like, why didn't you just wait on that? It was a bad look. It's like when you wonder about Gerard Gallant and what went wrong in these other markets, and you see some weird stuff like that, it doesn't make fans feel good about it. Like they were confused. Like it was a bad thing. But in this game, there were 4 goals scored in like a minute and change. There was absolutely no defense on either side. Mm-hmm. Fox was the only one who was playing defense, it seemed, and maybe a little bit for Keandre Miller. But the biggest problem here for the Rangers is Jared Chinordi can't play in the NHL. He absolutely gave up a goal all on his own by completely getting beat on a play and letting the guy go in straight on his goalie. And I think that was after, I think it was Georgiev at that point. It was brutal. And the fact that they even have him on this team, I don't get, because again, how many behemoths do you need on one team? So that's one thing. The other thing was Capo Caco, I said many times, has to have the puck in space. So he's kind of like that wide receiver. If you can catch him in motion, then he's going to get a lot of yards after the catch. And if you can catch Caco in motion with a little bit of room, he's going to score. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. He was like the third guy to get the puck. He gets it with a little room. And if he's coming in on a goalie, which, again, somebody argued with me on another show, but most of Caco's goals are scored within 10 feet of the goal, sometimes closer. And if you get him able to work in that space, he's going to beat the goalie most of the time because he has a very decisive shot. His problem is he can't get that space all the time. And my problem with the Rangers is they haven't tried to have a play like that where, hey, and that was just, that one just happened naturally. But, once in a while, if you're coming at a break or something, try and get it to Caco. Like, try and get him going, build his confidence. They don't ever seem to do that. So I was happy to see that. We'll see if it happens more. Well,
he's had more success lately, 3 goals in his last 4 games.
Yes.
So, the concern of, the former number 2 overall pick, sort of dying on the vine, maybe that's not, not the case. At least when I saw them playing against Toronto, he was playing in a primary role. He was playing with Panarin in that game, but they have to give Lafreniere and him better line mates to play. Don't put him in.
Caco's getting him. Lafreniere, that's a whole other situation. But yeah, I'll say this: the Sabres kept coming back, and Tage Thompson does look great. Like, this is the Tage Thompson that I saw pre-draft. He's been on a little bit of a sojourn too, but I do think Granado's really brought out. And again, a lot of times bigger players do take longer, and now he's more comfortable in his new position. And you know what? He's really doing well. Like, he is a force now.
Well, Cap, I'll just say this about the Sabres. I give them all the credit for trying as hard as they are. They're working for Granato. There's just not enough talent there to win. And that's where, I think they've now lost 7 of their last 9. And that's where I think most people thought they were going to be.
Yeah, but I think this has been a better season than people thought because there's been a lot more positivity than negativity. Like, Kevin Adams has been a little better than we thought he was going to be, for the fact that he didn't have any experience. And I remember when he was first hired, I mean, everybody's take was similar in that, maybe he will be a good GM, just it wasn't the time to hire him. Like he needed a little more time. Well, he got a lot of on-the-job training, and he's done well. Granato, we suspected he was going to do a good job with younger players than he has. And everybody's improved, including, as you all pointed out, the last show that we were on, the veteran players. And I think you can see signs of life. And the fact that Quinn has played so well down in Rochester, I think also has given that team a little bit more optimism. And the fact that Krebs, and he's still got to do it, but Krebs is considered to be a prospect in the same general talent level as him. So, they've got some people coming. There's a lot going on. I think they feel good about what's happened in this season. And, I think the fans there deserve to be able to say, well, let's wait a little bit and see, how this team is doing. So it's one thing to, have a positive vibe. It's another thing to win games. So right now they got the positive vibe. They haven't done well lately in terms of wins and losses, but I think it's better than we thought, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Just want to mention this, Mike, because of the chat room. Somebody was asking who's better, Kakko or Nolan Patrick. Right now it's Kakko. Patrick doesn't have a chance to be better. He's still in the IR. Yeah. He's only played 4 games this year, and there's no timetable. And I think he was hit in the head again. I think it was a shoulder. I thought it was a shoulder. I knew it was upper body. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen with him. Like I don't know when he's going to get to play again for Vegas. It's tough right now.
Here's the interesting thing. You brought up Tage Thompson, and of course we have Troy Terry doing what he is. And I've kind of circled around this on a couple of other shows, but really we should take a look at this because I think it's really interesting. I've asked people about it, and everybody says the same thing. Well, it does happen. Then I always say, well, give me other guys. And that is, players who are, 24, all of a sudden getting good. Like Troy Terry has more points than he had last season. Right. And he hasn't played any games. And suddenly he's a prominent player. Thompson is a much better player. How old is Thompson now?
He's 24.
23,
yeah. 23, 24.
Yeah, 24. That's late. And it'd be interesting to figure out how many guys have developed this late. I think it's far less than we think it is. Because I off the top of my head, I couldn't come up more than a couple. So.
Well, I mean, I think there's more than you think.
I disagree. I think it's less than we think. How many do you think there are?
Guys, I just don't think it's guys with putting up major points. Like if you're saying, yeah, you've gotten to the point where.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about offensive players.
Okay. If you're talking about, then it's definitely less. It's definitely
less. Because guys who are, role players, like they're going to get a little better.
Like Derek Forbert is your perfect example. Like he scored 2 goals the other night. He'll never score 2 goals again. But everybody called him a complete bust, and the Kings took forever to get him to the NHL, but they did, and now he's stayed in the NHL.
Well, I mean, if you're Kev, if you're talking about players who sort of played in their early 20s in the NHL. Like Terry did, like Thompson did. Thompson had a number of injuries.
Right.
That's one thing. If you're talking about players that played in college and come out at 23 or 24, like say Marty St. Louis played at Vermont, and then when he played a couple games here or there for Calgary, and then really blew up when he went to Tampa. At that point, he was 25 years old. So
yeah, that's a difference. That's a different
that is.
And it's a different era too. It's that was 20 years ago.
I mean, it still happens. There's still going to be guys that come out 23, 24. I mean, Chase Prisky's one right now that I think is 25, and he's playing pretty good hockey. So
I mean, like Michael Bunting and I'm not saying he's a big success story, but he had 10 goals in 21 games last year. He was 25 years old. He had played 3 years in the American Hockey League. This year, he comes over to the Leafs, signs a 2-year deal. Now he's 26, and he's playing on the top line with Matthews and Marner.
Yeah,
so,
I would count him. But I was kicking around with the GM, and we started talking about maybe 10 or 15% of guys need a little bit longer. But I don't know whether that's true. It'd be interesting to go through and say, I'm mostly talking about the guys who come in and they're real slow developing, and then suddenly they become
they just find it. They just find it. Yeah.
Like Ryan Donato's on the edge of that too. He's having a pretty good year. He's slowed down a little bit, but the whole team has. But he's got 6 points in 16 games. Right. It's not bad. He's 25. It does happen, but I think it's a low number, like you said.
Just want to ask, because when Russ referenced Gallant and the incident from yesterday, I mean, we know Gallant's history in Florida, gets fired, the whole cab situation, the Vegas situation, goes to the Stanley Cup final, then gets surprisingly dismissed in favor of Peter DeBoer. Now has the big deal with the Rangers. There are certain aspects of the sort of right coach, but the wrong market for that coach to be in. The perfect illustration of that is Tortorella in Vancouver. He was perfect with the Rangers. He was perfect with Columbus because it was a smaller market. In Vancouver, every time he sneezed, it was a front page story. I mean, it's too early to tell, but is there such a thing as the right coach in the wrong market, Kev?
The right coach, and I think there is for sure, where you can do things, and a lot of it has to do with how much media there is in there. Usually,
yes, media has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, because in some places where everything you do is scrutinized, and like for example, and it's the same thing for players. Some things that you can get away with in Florida, you can't get away with in Montreal,
right?
Or Toronto. Or New York, I think like even in Detroit, you don't face the level of scrutiny just by sheer numbers that you do in say New York as well, where you have a half dozen people covering the Red Wings on a full-time basis, where in Montreal it's 4 times that. Yeah, there's a lot of guys covering and women covering the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, like a good example, like when this happened with Gallant, it's not a big deal, and he might be right. I don't know if he is right, because I think Zibanejad was more right. But at any rate, it was trending on Twitter. Like, it's that quick. Because there's not many Ranger fans out there. And then, of course, it gets asked post-game, and that probably annoys Gallant. And that's why I had said when they hired him, he is going to be tested like he's never tested before, as to what he does and why he does it, and he's under the microscope.
Well, Gallant's interesting. Usually, like I mentioned before, players like Sutter, where he's, probably the media has kind of an opposite reaction toward him, and so it's a little bit surprising. But Gallant, and then there was Tortorella, who was the same way. Players like him too. A lot of players like playing for him. Ryan McDonough liked playing for him. Seth Jones liked playing for him. But then it's the other one that you got to worry about. And I think Gallant, I've kind of heard, I've talked to some players who, he's a pretty nice guy and easy to deal with when you're in the media. But I've had players tell me that they didn't enjoy playing for Gallant.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
I found this hilarious. I just was in sort of searching out some stuff to talk about today. The Kraken beat the Capitals 5-2 yesterday, and the Kraken had a video honoring Vitek Vanacek, who never played a game for them, but he was claimed, and then they traded him back, and they had a video honoring Vitek.
I give the marketing departments in the NHL credit for, in the last, we've been kind of a conservative league for a long time, but in the last 5-6 years, they've gotten really clever. And that, to me, when I heard that, I just like you, I just thought it was hilarious. Like, they did such a great job with that. And like, people today are talking about it. That's just hilarious.
Yeah, it is. Now, and they were talking on the one of the morning shows I listened to about the fact that the Kraken had lost, I think, 6 in a row, and they won this game, and they're 5-12-1. And are they a disappointment? And I'm like, they're an expansion team. I mean, did the Vegas Golden Knights ruin it for every expansion team in every professional sport till the end of time?
Yes, they did. And, as I have to keep pointing out, the landscape, even though the expansion rules were the same, the landscape was completely different. The general managers had learned from what happened in the first one. They didn't give Seattle all those extra players. Go back and look at all the extra players that Vegas got. I don't even remember an extra player that the Kraken got. I'm sure they got 1 or 2, but
like, as an example, Kev, there were moves that we scrutinized with Ron Francis on that day. One of them was Jake Bean. Jake Bean's playing for Columbus. He's got 7 points in 15 games. We all could have predicted he was going to put up points as an offensive defenseman in this league. He had a shot at him. He didn't want him.
Yeah, well, he didn't want him, but I don't think that's why they're not. I mean, he made mistakes in the draft.
He made some mistakes. They could be a little better, is my point.
They could be. Maybe they could be a little better. But
I think what they did, Kev, is for example, I think it was San Jose. They claimed Alexander True, who I hadn't. Yeah. Okay, they did that because any other claim that they would have claimed from that team would have meant taking on bigger salary, and they didn't want to encumber themselves with big salaries because they wanted to go and spend money in free agency. So I get some of them, but they could have selected. I mean, they could have selected Carey Price. I mean, you say that would have been a bad thing, but
yeah,
there were options. They had options. They just decided not to go down that road. A couple other things. Blackhawks beat the Canucks last night, 1-0. The Canucks are reeling. The pressure is on Travis Green. Jim Benning has come out and talked to the media. There's a lot of indications that something is going to happen pretty soon, Kev. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but it didn't get better for them. They had a 3-game homestand. I believe they've lost the first 2 games of the 3-game homestand. It's getting to the point now where ownership is being painted into a corner. I don't know if that means they're going to make a trade, or if that means that somebody's going to get fired, but it's getting close.
Yeah, I mean, this is the scenario in which we see coaches get fired. It's really gotten to that point. There's almost a formula for it. They're kind of in the protocol. They're in the coach firing protocol. Yeah. And so, whether or not they test positive or not, I don't know. Something's going to give here. Because the team looks like it's waiting for something to happen, and whenever you get in that mode, usually you do have to make something happen. So they either got to make a major, trade, or they have to fire the coach, and it's always easier, except for Bill Zito, to change, to fire the coach than to change the whole team. Bill Zito prefers to change the whole team. But
do we think that Travis Green and Benning are tied together, and that's why the move hasn't happened yet, Kev? Is that possible?
Yeah, that's a real interesting point, Russ. Yeah, I mean, that could be how he sees it. That if I end up having to fire this guy, then I'll be next. Yeah. Although I don't think that'll happen in season. That, to me, that's a day after the regular season ends kind of move. But it's so disappointing. Because they have such a nice collection of younger players.
They do.
And we really thought, I think a lot of us thought that this team was really going to make a move this season. And, Thatcher Demko showed last season he could carry the load. And they've got Quinn. They've got players up front. They got a lot going for it, but they haven't been able to put it together.
Yeah, and you can't blame Demko last night. I mean, he
No.
allowed one goal, but his team couldn't manage more than that. So, the Lightning beat the Minnesota Wild 5-4 yesterday. But I think the story of this is the fact that they lost Braden Point, who's now out indefinitely. I didn't hear specifically, but they said it's an upper body injury, and that on top of Kucherov. Kev.
Yeah.
I mean, Sorelli's playing great, and the other players are picking up the slack, but they need Point. And if Point's out for 6-7 weeks, they're in trouble.
Well, I don't think they're in trouble, but
they're in trouble maintaining the level that we expect.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They still have enough talent, I think, to be a playoff team, but they're not going to be the same team. You can't lose both Kucherov and Point on top of everything they lost in the offseason and expect to be the same team. They probably won't be, but they really had some bad luck. That's for sure. They may have to. I can't imagine Julien Brisebois with long-term IR cap relief that he'll have, not trying to do something.
I think he will. I think you're right about that. I'm not so worried about them, but I think the other side of that story is the Minnesota Wild got a point, and they're still in first place.
Yeah,
and that's a good thing. I know people thought I was crazy. Mick Kern on Sirius thought I was crazy because he used the terminology. Well, give me a crazy prediction. And I was predicting Minnesota, whether it was crazy or not. I predicted them on this show, but I still said it. So, because I felt like I know people thought it was crazy, but they are a good team. Like they should be looked at as a good team.
One thing that worries me about them, Mike, look up, if you will, their team save percentage.
Okay.
I think it's down near the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Kakkonen, I know, has had some struggles. I noticed that recently, but they're getting goals. The Zuccarello, Kaprizov connection's really good. Dumba's having a really good year. Eriksson Ek is having another good year. They took what's his name off the power play, and they're still surviving. Kevin Fiala's not even on the power play anymore.
Yeah.
Cam Talbot's played 14 games. He has a .905 save percentage, which is below league average.
Yeah.
Kakkonen has played 4 games and has an .870.
Yeah, he's had some struggles.
So their team save percentage is under 900. That's
they're and it that's gonna hurt them over the long run if they don't pull it up. Now I would assume Talbot will pull his up, but.
You have to say this, Kev, though. I mean, if they maintain their level of success with the goaltending playing the way it is, I mean, we keep saying Edmonton is the team that's going to go after a goaltender, a number one goaltender before the playoffs. Well, Minnesota's got a team here that's really playing well, and if these goaltenders continue to play like this, they might be in the market for a goalie as well. So
they could
be. Yeah. Here's an interesting one. Kev, if you want to talk about late bloomers. So Marcus Felino is having the best statistical year of his career so far. He's on pace for that. He's already got 12 points. He only had 20-something last year. And usually he's only good for between 19 and 20-something points. But he's got 7 goals this year.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden he's 30 and he's playing his best hockey. He started playing better last year. I don't have an answer for it.
Yeah, I think that's different, though, than Troy Terry and Donato and guys. Yeah, I mean, that's just – it's just like Nemestikov in Detroit already has 7 goals.
Yeah, well, I mean, Russ, and being in Buffalo, I remember this. When he came up originally with the Sabres, he had 13 points in 14 games, and everybody thought they found his dad. Like it was his dad coming back. And then he sort of settled into being sort of the role player, third liner type of guy that he is. I really like Marcus Felino as a player. He's a physical force. He's, I think a good middle 6 forward. But yeah, I mean, he's got 7 goals in 18 games right now. He's on pace to have 20. So if he does that, that will be his career year.
Now, the other player I want to talk about is Ryan Hartman, because he got sort of put into not an enforcer role, but like a 4th line role pretty early on in his NHL career. And this kid in juniors had excellent hands and was a good goal scorer besides being a shit disturber. And so he got more known in the NHL as that, except Minnesota's like, man, he's got a really good shot. We're going to put him on the power play this year, and he's got 9 goals. He's second on the team in scoring. Ryan Hartman has kicked around a little bit, but Ryan Hartman's talent really never went anywhere. I just don't think he was ever in the right role.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was given a long enough chance in any of the places that he.
Chicago, he had the 19 goals in 2016-17.
But yeah, I mean, he's gone a couple other places and really hasn't been given
Nashville, Philly,
long look. So
he's got 9 goals.
One thing about Minnesota, in terms of their goals against average as well, I knew there was something that they had difficulty in. And listen to the teams; they're 27th in the league in goals against, and they're down in the bottom here with the Senators, the Canadiens, the Coyotes, the Kraken, and the Red Wings. And they've had such success, this season with a goals against average, which tells you how strong they've.
That means they're scoring a lot more goals than those teams on the bottom. That's what it means.
That's sort of like the Leafs from a few years ago. It's like you're scoring 5 goals a game.
They're outscoring their problems.
Right.
But that'll bite you at some point, because I don't know that they're going to score 3.5 goals per game.
Right.
The whole season. But that was the one that struck me that was kind of odd.
No, that's a fair point. I didn't know that.
They're keeping they're not, the company they're keeping is not who they need to be by. In that regard.
Okay, a couple interesting little news and notes here before we end the show. Elliot Friedman reported over the weekend that Fenway Sports Group, which is the group that is in talks, or probably further than talks, of buying the Pittsburgh Penguins. He said that about 12 to 18 months ago, they approached Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment about a merger, which would have put together the Red Sox, an English Premier team, the Leafs, the Raptors, the Toronto Blue. Now that's the thing. Rogers owns the Toronto Blue Jays, so the same ownership group would own the Toronto Blue Jays and the Boston Red Sox, which probably would have not flown straight with Major League Baseball. Obviously, it didn't happen, and they moved on and they ended up buying the Penguins, but. Kev, we've seen these sort of multi owners in different leagues. Harris with the 76ers and the Devils, the Pagulas in Buffalo with the Sabres and the Bills. Friedman thinks that this is the future, and if it is the future, I don't know if I like it. I like the individual owner when it's not Harold Ballard, not a criminal who should be put in jail. But I liked the individual owner, like the George Steinbrenner, and I don't know if I want these multi-billion-dollar conglomerates owning teams.
Yeah, but I think the days of the single owner are gone.
It's over.
Yeah, I don't see it happen. The prices of the franchises are so big. Like, I had this conversation, to buy an NFL team, even if you're a billionaire, you have to bring on help. You can't afford, if you're buying a $2 billion team and you're only worth $1 billion,
right?
You have to bring in someone. The cost is so enormous. Like, this deal, I mean, this is really good news for the NHL. I mean, here we are, and with pandemic style revenue in this league, and one of the franchises in hockey is selling for $850 million. Now, it's not $1 billion, but darn close. I mean, we're creeping up. And you think back in the old days when, I remember someone said that Howard Baldwin at one point was worth about $5 million was his net worth, and he owned an NHL team.
Right.
We don't have that anymore.
I think it's like the racehorse business. Like, everybody owns these shares in it, and it's like that in the teams now. Like, you hear LeBron James will, in a way, be a partner in this because he's a minority owner, like
of the Red Sox. Yeah.
I saw that Josh Yoshi, who covers the Penguins, said that there is a lot of enthusiasm within the Penguins for this new ownership. So
I've heard that too.
Yeah. I actually saw Josh on Saturday. I didn't talk about it, but I saw him up in Toronto. Jeff Merrick reported on Saturday that the premier of the province of Quebec, Francois Legault, apparently mentioned over the weekend about the return of the Nordiques to Quebec City, that he's going to be talking to Gary Bettman, and that the province of Quebec would solicit investors to form a consortium that would be worth over $1 billion, and that there would be some sort of government investment to bring an NHL club back to La Belle Province. And according to Merrick talked to Bill Daly, and Bill Daly says, well, we love the interest, but we're happy with 32 teams. Right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to go. Why are they going to risk bringing a team in that has problems with the Canadian dollar? Like, the Canadian dollar is the problem.
They're not going to expand. That's the thing. They're not going to expand to 33 unless they want to form 3 conferences of 11 teams. They're not going to do that. But Kev, I think it's a possibility when we see, an Arizona team just being an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule out at some point expansion. Okay. I have talked to league officials off the record who describe Quebec as low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Like, they know that the team will do well there. There are some issues, the Canadian dollar, this and that.
79 cents to the American dollar.
Right. Those are issues. But they've got that in their pocket. Like, you don't have to do a lot of research about whether hockey is going to work.
And they have a ring.
But there's no hurry. They don't need a team.
Right. They have a brand new building, so right. that with corporate boxes and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, and the return of the best hot dogs in sports history. I mean, I've had a Dodger dog. I'm sorry, but they don't.
I've heard so much about the hot dogs at the Bell Center, and I want to go to the draft just to try one of these damn hot dogs, Kev.
No, they're really good. You can't even describe them. It's like the softest bread you've ever had, and the grilled, and it's just in Quebec they were the best.
Just don't get any mustard anywhere near it. Okay.
Whatever.
Last thing in our daily Olympic update, Chris Johnston from Sportsnet reported this morning that the enthusiasm. First of all, I don't know if there was any enthusiasm on the part of the league to go, the teams, but that it's waning about the participation. Now, we heard about the talk over the weekend about Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden talking about diplomatic boycott, but this is sort of ramped up in the last 72 hours, Kev, because of this Chinese tennis star who made accusations against a member of the Chinese Communist Party, and then was basically erased from social media and shut up for 3 weeks. And now all of a sudden in the last 24 hours, there's video of her talking with the Olympic Committee, and that things are calmed down. But the whole point here is we're talking about a government that is, the origins of COVID. That's been hanging over their head. The Uyghurs genocide in Western China. It's a preponderance of things. If this thing, I mean, we don't know where it's going to go, and it's a little late in the game, but it keeps coming up. Yeah,
I keep hearing the same thing, that there's way too much money involved for it to ever to have an athlete boycott this late in the game. But Gary Bettman would love it if the players would just say, we've changed our mind. We don't want to go. Like they didn't want to go. It had nothing to do with any of this stuff. They didn't really want to go. But they gave this to the players because the players wanted it. And they agreed to it. And I think Bettman I just can't imagine him pulling the plug on it from the players. Mm-hmm. He just doesn't want to go to war with players. But I'm sure he'll call down and say, "You sure you guys want to go?" Because this is also, there are issues that that are hard on players. I just talked to someone recently who is really disappointed that they have to wear masks at all times there in the Olympics, even though supposedly everyone will be vaccinated. But they got to wear a mask, and so they're really disappointed by all that. And
I heard something today about a player. If a player tests positive while over in China, that I believe it's a 3 week, sequestering. of that. So say, for example, God forbid, Connor McDavid catches COVID in the last week of the Beijing Olympics. That means that he's lost to the Edmonton Oilers until the middle of March. I mean,
yeah, I hadn't heard that part, but yeah. So I don't know. I mean, players knew all the hardships before and still wanted to go, but it'll be interesting to see. If you say they're waning a little bit, will they change their mind? So, boy, that would put the federations in a real bind. Although I'm sure they have contingency plans.
No, you know that they have lists of players that will go, and they just won't be the NHL players. That's all.
No, but it still is not easy to put a team together that quickly.
No.
There's visas, there's drug testing, there's all kinds of issues. So the logistics of that would not be simple.
Yeah. All right. Great show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. And I'm going to go defrost a